Few kings in history had to face as many challenges as Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. Imagine being crowned at a young age, discovering that you have an incurable disease and still leading armies against one of the greatest generals of all time, Saladin. The life of this monarch was a true battle against fate, politics, and the very fragility of his own body. Let's explore the impressive trajectory of Baldwin IV, the Leper King. From his childhood marked by illness, through his strategic victories against the powerful Islamic army, to his final days trying to ensure the survival of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. If you enjoy stories of courage, faith, and impossible challenges, follow along until the end. You will be surprised by the impact of this young king, who, despite his weakness, bravely resisted overwhelming forces and left a lasting legacy in the history of the Church. Are you ready for this incredible journey through the 12th century? Then let's begin. To understand Baldwin's story, it is essential to know the world in which he lived. In the 12th century, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was one of the Crusader states formed after the First Crusade, when European Christians conquered the Holy Land. Despite initial victories, the kingdom's survival was fragile, surrounded by Muslim enemies and divided by internal disputes. In the Islamic world, a great threat was emerging, named Saladin. A Kurdish leader and Sultan of Egypt and Syria, he unified the Muslims under his banner and had a clear objective: to resume the march to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, within the Christian kingdom, politics was unstable, with nobles competing for power and influence. Baldwin IV was born into this tense scenario. As heir to the crown, his life was already destined to be difficult, but the discovery that he had leprosy would change everything. For many, this meant a death sentence. However, against all odds, he not only survived, but also became one of the most courageous monarchs in history. Baldwin was born in the year 1161, the son of King Amalric V of Jerusalem and Queen Agnes of Courtenay. From an early age, he was raised for leadership, receiving a refined education under the tutelage of William of Tyre, a renowned historian and cleric of the time. It was he who noticed something alarming about the young prince. He did not feel pain when pinched on his arm. This was one of the first signs of leprosy, a feared disease that for many meant isolation and death. Despite the disease, Baldwin's fate was sealed when his father died in the year 1174. At just 13 years old, he was crowned King of Jerusalem. The fragility of his health made many doubt his ability to rule, but the young monarch surprised everyone. Determined, he did not let himself be discouraged and demonstrated remarkable military skills. The greatest threat to his reign was Saladin, a brilliant Muslim leader and ruthless strategist. In the year 1177, Baldwin faced his first major military test during the Battle of Montgisard. With a small army and his health deteriorating, he confronted Saladin's vastly superior forces. Against all odds, the Crusaders achieved a crushing victory. Baldwin, still a teenager and already weakened by leprosy, was seen personally leading his knights, inspiring his troops to fight to the end. This victory gave the young king a legendary reputation and delayed Saladin's plans for years. However, his disease continued to progress. Leprosy disfigured his face and body, and he began to lose the use of his hands and his sight. Even so, Baldwin continued to rule, surrounding himself with loyal advisors and trying to keep the kingdom united. But the internal disputes among Christian nobles were becoming increasingly dangerous. The king knew he would not live long and needed to secure the succession to the throne. He attempted various alliances, but the kingdom was divided between rival factions, such as those led by Raymond III of Tripoli and the ambitious Guy of Lusignan. Meanwhile, Saladin was gathering his forces for a final attack on Jerusalem. The political and military situation was growing more unstable, and Baldwin, despite his frailty, was still preparing for another great battle. His final years were marked by a relentless struggle against the enemy's advance, and the internal intrigues of his own kingdom. Leprosy was progressively weakening his body, but his mind remained sharp. He knew he could not lead Jerusalem for much longer and tried to ensure a stable succession. But the Crusader nobles were divided. The greatest problem was Guy of Lusignan, husband of his sister Sibylla. Baldwin never trusted Guy and feared he would not be capable of defending the kingdom. In an attempt to counter this threat, he appointed his nephew, Baldwin V, as co-king, hoping that a council of regents would keep the kingdom safe after his death. However, the division among the Christian factions weakened Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Saladin continued gathering forces. In the year 1183, he launched another offensive against the Crusader states, attacking the castle of Kerak. Even gravely ill, Baldwin left Jerusalem in a litter carried by knights and marched to the confrontation. His presence forced Saladin to retreat once again, but everyone knew this resistance would not last forever. In the following years, his health deteriorated rapidly. The king could no longer walk or use his hands, and his face was disfigured by leprosy. Even so, he remained in power until the year 1185, when, too weak to rule, he officially abdicated in favor of his nephew Baldwin V. Shortly afterward, in the same year, Baldwin IV passed away at just 24 years old. His death left Jerusalem vulnerable. Guy of Lusignan ultimately seized power after the young Baldwin V's death, and his disastrous rule led to the greatest tragedy for the Crusaders, sealing their defeat at the Battle of Hattin in the year 1187. With this victory, Saladin finally took Jerusalem, ending nearly a century of Christian rule over the Holy City. Despite his short life and terrible physical condition, Baldwin proved to be an extraordinary leader. Even while facing one of the most feared diseases of the Middle Ages, he heroically resisted Saladin and delayed the fall of Jerusalem for nearly a decade. His legacy was that of a courageous king, a brilliant strategist, and a symbol of determination in the face of suffering. Baldwin's story is one of the most fascinating of the Crusades. Although he was crowned as a teenager and condemned by an incurable disease, he defied all odds. Even weakened by leprosy, he led armies, confronted Saladin, and postponed the fall of Jerusalem. His legacy goes beyond war. Baldwin symbolizes courage, resilience, and the struggle against fate. He did not allow his physical condition to define him, proving that leadership and bravery do not depend on physical strength, but on determination and intelligence. His reign, though short, left a deep mark on medieval history and the imagination of the Crusades. His death paved the way for political instability in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, where his successor, Guy of Lusignan, led a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Hattin, allowing Saladin to reclaim the Holy City. Thus, the death of the Leper King can be seen as the beginning of the end for Christian rule in the Holy Land. But his story continues to inspire. Baldwin is a symbol of courage and resilience. If you enjoyed the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment. We'll be back next time with another incredible story. See you soon.